Well, I want to welcome everyone. My name is Eric Smith. I'm the Community and Economic Development Educator for Central State University. I work in the Cooperative Extension Service. It's a CESTA 1890 land grant program of CSU. I'm one of your co-hosts today, and the other is Michelle. Michelle, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Michelle Wallace. I am the Agriculture and Natural Resource Extension Educator with Central State University in Northwest Ohio. Thank you.
Great. And I should have said I serve in Northwest Ohio as well. Just again, warm welcome. Thank you for being here. I think you're going to really learn today and enjoy your time. And also a special thanks to our presenter today. We have a special event time, special time ahead of us. Kurt Lieber has joined us, and he works as a district director for the USDA Farm Service Agency, an agency he's worked with since 2009, out of the North Central region. He brings with a wealth of knowledge. He's worked previous to his current role as district director. He worked in the as a farm loan manager, and so he understands the financial side of the FSA and the other USDA agencies. Interestingly, he's also a farmer, so you'll want to know that. He works with that on the side, also a small business owner, and is specializing in small grains. So he has just a wealth of knowledge from all angles. So whether it's business planning or ag finance analysis, he can bring a lot of information to you. He's also a graduate of OSU, where he studied agriculture and agricultural education. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Kurt to talk to us about our topic today, which is agricultural financial opportunities, funding opportunities for growing our small farms. Kurt?
All right. Thank you, Eric. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. Probably more than I'm worthy of. So give me a second here. I'll share my screen with everyone. And if somebody could confirm that you're able to see that, that'd be great. Awesome. So again, my name's Kurt Lieber. I am talking today as a representative for the Ohio Beginning Farmer Rancher team in Ohio through the USDA. So a couple things that we do at USDA, we have some opportunities to expand our outreach. So we want to get started with USDA. That's always the biggest thing, is how do we get started? How do we get in the door? If you're not familiar with the agency or with anything that the agency does, but you know that there's something to be had, how do you get started? And the first thing that you can do is obviously connect with your state beginning farmer coordinators, such as myself. There's 3 others that make up the team. Doug Deerdorf represents NRCS. Jessica Hyen represents the Risk Management Agency, and Jennifer Brown represents the rural development side of things. We'll go over each individual agency a little later, but I also wanted to talk about the service center structure. So USDA has multiple service centers across the state. FSA in particular has 62 located in the 88 counties. They're readily available. Multiple times I'm going to point out the farmers.gov website to you. Farmers.gov has been a tremendous resource that's been developed over the last several years, and it's something that's not really been available in the past. It's somewhere you can go to ask questions, run through some selections to get to information that's going to help you with what you're looking for. There's also USDA service locator on that website that will let you know where the most local service center is for you. And once you do that, the most prominent agencies to have in the service centers are Farm Service Agency and NRCS, which is the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And we'll get into each one of those individually a little bit later. One of the first things that I wanted to touch on has to do with some of our definitions, because it's important to know exactly where you may qualify. And I should start by saying that while we do have different definitions for a lot of these programs, a lot of these programs are not specific just to these groups. So it may qualify you to be in a different funding pool, which funding pools work within the agency to ensure that funds are available for underserved groups, so that just because there's a lower percentage of an underserved group that's applying for the program, just because they don't apply timely doesn't mean they're shut out from participating. So that pool of funds is held back in order to ensure that that is available for the longest reasonable time during the fiscal year, and then that renews every year. So beginning farmers, according to FSA, and this also it depends on the program a little bit, but generally we work off of a 10-year time frame. If you're looking to buy real estate, we like to see 3 years of experience before that, but we look at anything before 10 years is considered beginning farmer. We start looking at buying land. We talk about not owning greater than 30% of the average farm size in the county. That data is maintained by FSA, and if you have more questions about that, your local office is the best to get in for that. We have the SDA, or historically underserved groups. Those are used interchangeably. Socially disadvantaged is what SDA would stand for. That's a definition by law as one who is a member of a socially disadvantaged group whose members have been subjected to racial, ethnic, or gender prejudice because of their identity as a member of the group without regard to their individual qualities. So they got them listed there as African American, American Indian, Alaska Native, Hispanics, Asians, Pacific Islanders, and women. So those are a couple of those definitions. One of the next ones is about veteran farmers or ranchers. And farmers or ranchers, again, we're looking at that 10-year window, and they've obtained a status as a veteran within the most recent 10-year period. It's important to note with as any of these, if we have a entity and not an individual we're looking at, we look at least 50% owner for a veteran there, so to qualify as a veteran producer. Again, just some definitions to kind of lay some groundwork for us. So starting with FSA in particular, the Farm Service Agency, everything we do with FSA is split into two main categories. One is the farm programs category, and the other is farm loans. Farm programs is derived from the Commodity Credit Corporation and funding through the Farm Bill. That's where our disaster assistance programs, our conservation programs, our safety nets, our market safety nets, and our risk management comes from. Farm loans are statutory programs that are derived through the annual budget. We offer ownership loans, operating loans, microloans, loan guarantees, and we can get into those a little bit here. But those are the two main constructs within Farm Service Agency. Back to our structure, the county office, farm programs are administered through the county offices. Farm loans are also administered through the county offices, but we have farm loan teams that are more widely spread. So we may have a concentration of a farm loan team that covers multiple counties. And farmers.gov, again, is another good resource for finding exactly where that farm loan team that you're looking for is located. So again, as talked about, FSA allows for you to do your crop acreage reporting there. You can sign up for disaster programs such as the big one here for smaller or specialty crop producers is the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program. We commonly refer to that as NAP. That's for people who are growing crops that are not commercially insurable. We have the Emergency Assistance for Livestock. There's a honeybees program, farm raised fish program. That's called ELAP. We have the Livestock Indemnity Program, which is for obviously livestock producers, or commonly referred to as LIP. And you'll notice we have a lot of acronyms for just about anything we work with the government. So we have LFP, ECP, and then the Farm Storage Facility Loan Program. All of these programs taken on in one fell swoop can be a lot to digest. I recommend, if you are looking at getting into farming, you're looking at including USDA as part of your existing farm, whatever that may be. Have the conversations with your local county office. They can help you through exactly what you need or what would benefit you to be involved in. And they are going to be able to help you navigate a lot of these programs. So know that when you go to sign up for these, you won't be alone. You're not going to be expected to know all the ins and outs. You're not going to be expected to fill all the paperwork out on your own. You're going to be able to have some folks give you some guidance there to figure out exactly what's going to fit your operation. Oh, the next part that everybody asks is about eligibility. Okay. The big one here we'll focus on loans. So FSA, we consider it supervised credit, or they've since changed the term to call it progressive lending, or progression lending, I should say. It's different from traditional credit, whereas when we make a loan through FSA, we're not looking to retain the loan for the entire life of the loan. Our goal is to help you mature your financial standing to the point to where a commercial lender is attracted by your operation. And at that point, we want you to complete the graduation process into commercial credit. Help form partnerships that are going to be more beneficial to your operation going forward. It's going to give you more opportunities, a partner to work through your operation with. So we look at for direct and guaranteed applicants, you've got to be unable to obtain sufficient credit elsewhere, which means you basically can't get the loan without FSA's help. You got to be a legal citizen. You got to have legal capacity to incur the loan, which essentially means that you are of 18 years of age, with the exception of the youth loan program, and you have to be of sound mental capacity. You have to have acceptable credit history. Now, when I talk about acceptable credit history, we don't look at credit score, okay? We look at credit history. The reason why that's a qualifier is we don't necessarily have a cutoff for credit scores. Credit history, we will look at extenuating circumstances. Sometimes medical bills can severely hamper what's been going on in your credit history. We'll take into consideration events that are outside of your control. Maybe something was erroneously placed in your credit and you have documentation to back that up. So we look at the big picture there. We don't have a credit score determining factor. And then finally, you have to be the owner operator or renter tenant operator of a family farm. And the definition of a family farm basically means that you're not a large factory farm, as maybe some terms have been said. That's a quite large operation. We're talking about people that are not involved in the day-to-day operations of the farm that are running the farm. We want people that want to work with people that are actively engaged in the daily proceedings. They're making the managerial decisions. They're producing labor on the farm. So some other general eligibility requirements: you can't be delinquent on federal debt. You've got to demonstrate managerial ability for the type of loan requested, and this can vary depending on, again, the type of loan you're looking at. But again, that's where the 3-year requirement comes in for purchasing real estate. That's a longer term commitment. That's a bigger commitment typically. And just about anytime you're going to come to a lender looking for the chance to buy land, it's unique from buying a house. We're not looking at a W-2 and saying, yes, you can make the payments. This is a little deeper than that. It's a little bit more layers of the onion to unpeel, and we've got to look and make sure that you understand the intricacies of a farming operation. And so some ways to obtain that managerial ability or demonstrate that can be through experience, renting ground and actually taking on the operation your own, developing it from nothing, working on a similar operation, and not just working, but taking part in the managerial capacity of the operation as a farm manager, possibly. Also have the opportunity to take advantage of events such as incubator farm programs. I know Central State has a wonderful incubator farm program that they're working with a mentor. Starting off on a smaller scale with a microloan, there's some of the ways to get around some of these, not maybe get around is probably the proper term, but to meet what we're looking for managerial ability. not having caused the agency a loss by receiving debt forgiveness. There are a couple of exceptions to that, but those are rare circumstances. And not been convicted of planting, cultivating, growing, producing, harvesting, or storing a controlled substance within the last 5 years. So if we're going to start talking about direct loans, we want to make sure that we have a business plan, and it's got to be realistic. So we oftentimes refer to that as the farm projection or the farm business plan, and we need to show that we're going to be able to project a positive repayment ability. So obviously, what that means is we're able to pay for the loan. We're able to cover our debt in an annual cycle. We need to be able to provide adequate collateral for the loan. So that means that in the worst case scenario event that we have to have a foreclosure because of a default, the agency is in position to collect back on the investment they've made to the operation. There is a restriction on years of eligibility, 7 years of obtaining an operating loan, not 7 consecutive years per se, but within 7 years of obtaining a loan. So you take an operating loan out in 2021, and you take 2 out in 2022, that only counts for 2 years. Likewise, if you skip 2023 and come back in 2024 and get a loan, you still only taken up 3 years of eligibility. If for farm ownership loans, that's a 10-year requirement, and that starts from the day you get your first loan. So if you obtain a loan on October 28th, 2021, then October 28th, 2031, your FO eligibility, farm ownership eligibility, will expire. So again, they talk about applicable education and training and experience. We talked about some of that stuff. We can also substitute with degrees in agricultural related field, military experience, or having a mentor. A big thing to understand when you're going to any lender, especially FSA, is we look on the 5 C's of credit: character, capital, collateral, market conditions, and capacity. So yeah, that's what you're judged on. So when you wonder what they're looking for, that's it. Character is probably the hardest one for somebody to judge. That's going to be, we're going to use your credit report to see how you've interacted with other lenders. There may be some other extenuating circumstances to look at there, but that can often be the toughest one to judge. So it's important to project yourself well when working with your loan officer. Obviously, first impressions make a big deal. Capital, that is how much cash you have on hand or how much equity you have on hand, and how much you've invested in your business. Collateral, that's going to be what's available to secure the loan, as we talked about. Market conditions, so big time here is there a need for what you're doing? Is there a market for what you're looking to grow? And the capacity, we talked about that with cash flow. So your ability to actually repay the loan. We need to have a plan for success, and especially if you're going to be getting into non-traditional ag, have a business plan put together. Put some time and effort into that. If anybody was on, we had a talk last Saturday. I kind of harped on that big time about making sure that you are putting together a presentable business plan. You need to sell yourself, sell your operation to the lender. The lender is tasked with doing a risk analysis, a risk assessment on your operation and you. They have to decide whether or not you are a good risk for the lender to take. That's what it boils down to. The more you can do that will mitigate any worries or any shortcomings you have in other areas of your operation, through preparation, through details that are provided, market research, whatever that may be, that's going to help your case. So take that for what you will, but that's a huge part coming as a lender. That's a huge part of the program. Talking about farm loan programs again, we have the direct program as mentioned before. That includes farm ownership loans that are longer term loans, operating loans which are term or short term loans, and microloans which are can be used for long term or short term, but they're for $50,000 or less. And the microloan is a shorter, that's a shorter deal there. shorter paperwork, less requirements, because we're dealing with a smaller amount of money. So just for reference, interest rates for November, which is the latest we have right now, 2.825 for farm ownership and 1.75 for direct operating. We also have guaranteed farm loan programs, and that's where we work with a commercial lender. And that commercial lender actually is the one that makes and services the loan, but they come to FSA and ask for FSA to back the loan. And they use that for a number of reasons. Sometimes they use it to sell it to secondary market holders to reduce some of their own liability in their portfolio. Sometimes they use it to offset some risk in the application. We'll provide a 90% guarantee. Essentially what that means is if the loan goes bad tomorrow, FSA will cover 90% of, up to 90% of the loss. If there is any, if they sell the land and there's a loss. So, or sell equipment or whatever they may have securing it. And then we also have, as a subset of our direct farm ownership program, the beginning farmer down payment loan. And what that allows folks to do is utilize both the direct and guaranteed loan programs in a participation status to purchase real estate. So the beginning farmer down payment loan, simply put, a guaranteed lender would take a first lien on at least 50% of the purchase, and the FSA lender would take on no more than 45% of the purchase at 1.5% fixed interest for 20 years, and you'd provide at least 5% in the down payment. So getting into that, the last bullet point there kind of gets into that a little bit more, or explains what that is. The max from FSA would be $300,150. The other lender can provide as much as they can, or they will. The guaranteed limit right now, total is 1.825 million. That's total indebtedness. The microloan program, again, is capped at $50,000. Farm ownership loans go up to $600,000 directly through FSA, and directly through FSA for operating is at $400,000. So quickly, I'll go through a couple of these. Oh, excuse me?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, Michelle.
About those loan amounts. So is there a size of operation like on those loan amounts? What's the size? What dictates how much you're eligible for?
Your cash flow, simply put, your cash flow and your collateral. So if you show that you have the capacity to take on that much debt, then we can go with it. If you can cash flow it and you can secure it. So obviously that's going to be directly related to your your size and scale. A startup, that's just developing their business plan and maybe in a first year of operation may have a hard time cash flowing $400,000 for a term operating expense. Whereas a more established operation may be able to utilize that whole limit. We really look at need. So when we start talking about operating notes, we talk about two different things. We talk about term operating notes, which would be for equipment, livestock, whatever. Then we talk, which is a great segue into what we're talking about here, Michelle. So thanks for that. We talk about term stuff there. We also talk about annual operating notes. And annual operating notes, what we look at there is your expenses. Okay, so we don't want to make an operating note to cover expenses for more than what your projected expenses are, because that's what we're covering for the year. And so that kind of helps to dictate where a reasonable loan amount comes from. And really, it's important to come to your lender knowing what you need and what you want to request. Probably one of the most unsettling things as a lender is somebody coming to you asking for a loan, and you say, well, how much are you looking for? And they say, well, I'm not really sure. That type of research needs to be done ahead of time. So does that answer your question, Michelle?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful.
Kurt, this is Eric. I just want to, again, I know Amber's kindly put this in the chat, but if you do have questions, do feel free to unmute, use your video function if you want, but do get your questions asked as we go through this.
Yes, please. And again, I'll try to maintain the chat as we go as well, but only got so many screens to look at. So if anybody sees something, wants to stop me, by all means, let's make this interactive. So I want to move on then, if we have nothing else on that, and finish up here with the farm ownership loans, talking about the two different types of loans. We can use those for land ownership, capital improvements such as buildings. Maybe we have to install drainage, soil and water conservation such as waterway projects, and we can work in tandem with NRCS on some of those things. And we can also include loan closing and related expenses in our farm ownership loans. Those terms can be out for up to 40 years and for a limit of $600,000 as previously mentioned. So that 40 years is something that we don't like to use unless it's necessary, because it's not necessarily in the best interest because of the way compound interest works. So, but it's there to be used as a tool to allow for additional cash flows for startup operations and young operations. We talked a little bit about microloans, and that might be a little more appropriate for this group because of the limited requirements for experience and such that are attached with microloans. So again, same uses for operating farm ownerships. They're the exact same uses for microloans. We can, the experience requirements, now the bullet point there, the third one down, they've been modified to accommodate applicants, small businesses. So we can use small business management and military experience towards our managerial requirements for ownership loans. And we can use a mentor program. I mentioned that prior. We can use that towards one of our years of experience. So again, the incubator programs are wonderful. They would fit in with this. And then again, operating loans for microloans, 1 to 7 years. The farm ownership for microloans, that is modified down to a 25-year term. And that's because we really don't want to see a $50,000 loan out there on a 40-year repayment. So it just would take way too long and wouldn't be beneficial for either party. The guaranteed loan program, again, talked about, that's made and serviced by the ag lenders. It's funded by the lender. It's backed up by FSA. Again, that limit there, $1,825,000. The down payment loan, once again, talked about that that is only for farm ownership loans to purchase real estate. Okay, real estate and improvements on real estate that are existing. We can't use that to build. We can't use that for land improvements. So again, FSA will loan up to $300,150 or 45% of the purchase price, whichever is less. We will require at least 5% of the purchase price down in a down payment in cash, and the balance of it would be covered by a commercial lender. The commercial lender could opt not to have a guarantee on that, but we offer a 95% guarantee with no guarantee fee. So it's a good deal for the lender there, and there's some incentive for them to participate with that. So that's been a very popular program, and has opened up a lot of access to real estate to folks that maybe wouldn't qualify for commercial financing, you know, with the 20 and 30% down payment requirements. Start talking about land anymore, that can be a significant chunk of change. So that's really FSA in a nutshell. I know I ran through that kind of quick. I do want to save some time here, especially if there's questions, but quickly wanted to touch on a few of the other agencies that we work with. And the Natural Resource Conservation Services, NRCS, they're one of our sister agencies. They are set up for working with conservation programs, as their name would suggest. So things like riparian buffers, field borders, wetland conservation, grass waterways, filter strips. Those type of practices are what they help with the technical, and they're basically the technical expert on conservation for USDA. And they have cost share programs. They work with, some of you may be familiar with the High Tunnel program. They work with that, and actually FSA can use the microloan program in tandem with, or other loan programs in tandem with that High Tunnel program through EQIP. So there's quite a bit going on there with NRCS. And again, I would encourage to if you have questions, to contact your local NRCS through that farmers.gov website contact and see what is going to work best for your individual operation. There is really what it comes down to is tailoring USDA, what USDA has to offer to your operation. The next one I want to talk about is the Risk Management Agency. And RMA is a little bit different from the Farm Service Agency and the NRCS because they're not really a forward producer-facing entity. They kind of work behind the scenes. They work through local crop insurance agents. So the crop insurance agents, the independent crop insurance agents, are who actually works with the public there. RMA backs those policies. And if you've ever heard of the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, that's who is actually dictating what products and the availability of crop insurance per approved crops. And again, there's a list on there. You can get onto farmers.gov and learn more about risk management, but they do have a location on their website where it specifically lists where crop insurance agents are. Typical insured crops, corn, soybeans, wheat, those sort of things, certain areas, barley. But again, as noted, if there's something you're raising that's not covered through RMA, we have the NAP program through Farm Service Agency that offers the opportunity to insure those non-insurable crops. And basically what that does is covers you in the event of some sort of weather event, natural losses, those type of things. The next USDA agency to talk about is rural development, and a bit of the history there. Rural Development and Farm Service Agency used to be held together as the Ag Statistics Conservation Service, the ASCS. Split back in 1995 into Farm Service Agency, Farm Loan Programs, and Rural Development. Rural Development took the housing loans, so the 504s, stuff like that. Those are done through Rural Development. They also provide direct and guaranteed loans for businesses. They get into rural business lending, and they have a grant program or multiple grant programs through what they call their Value-Added Producer Grant Program and their Rural Energy for America program. And their Value-Added Producer Grant Program is exactly what it sounds like. It incentivizes and gives grants for folks who are looking at adding something to better market what their produce is or what their product may be. And the Rural Energy for America program incentivizes incorporating energy efficient systems into your operation. And the final one to talk about is the Ag Marketing Service. And again, not really a forward-facing agency here, kind of behind the scenes, but they're the ones that compile the market data. They do some commodity procurement information work, and then they also do a little bit with local food grants. And again, more information is available for that on the farmers.gov website. Couple of things that I did want to touch on before we ended up here, or I ended my presentation anyways, is the importance of networking, especially when starting out. There are so many organizations and resources available, especially in Ohio, where we have an incredibly diverse set of ag. And the place to start is with your extension services. Central State here, we have a number of our extension representatives with us here. There's Farm Bureau has young farmer and rancher groups that are a wealth of knowledge, people with plenty of experience or maybe resources they can offer up. The State Department of Agriculture can be a good source of information for you. The Small Business Administration, believe it or not, they offer some work with business planning and developing that. There's also a couple of other organizations, nonprofits that help with putting together business plans. Keep an eye out for any local and state organizations, and obviously your colleges and universities. And I see Amber has her hand up.
As always, it's a pleasure whenever we get to converse with you, always learning something new. I just had a general kind of question. I've been getting a lot of inquiries from people as they're hearing more about extension here in Cincinnati area and Hamilton County, regarding actually young people who want to get into farming, but they're not 18 yet. So what would you suggest as a good place for them to start that kind of journey within USDA as a resource? And what are some of the things that they should kind of be thinking about or have prepared when they make that initial contact so it'll be more fruitful?
Hey, fantastic question. Glad you asked it because it highlights one of the loan programs we have that I really didn't touch on, and I apologize for that. So we have what's called the Youth Loan Program, and I may have mentioned it, but I really didn't get into it much. So the Youth Loan Program allows for a individual who is involved with a supervised agricultural project, either through FFA or 4-H, some type of youth organization that is supervising an agriculture related project. It allows for them to obtain financing up to $5,000 as needed to help get that off the ground. And a lot of times that can be for an annual project. Sometimes it can be utilized for a multi-year project or a term expense. But that youth loan application, the biggest thing there, again, we're going to put together some expenses and income. We're talking about a smaller amount of money, so it's not as involved. And obviously we want to try to secure it, but we're not as strict on that. We want to make sure that there's a mentoring organization that we're working with. And again, the two biggest ones are 4-H and FFA. If you have other organizations, we'd certainly be open to listening to what options there are out there. But that mentor has to sign off on the application. They actually have to sign the application that they are willing to help see this project through, and they're gonna provide the technical guidance to help that youth, so that we're not just giving money to a young person and expecting them to know what they're going to do with it. That's just not responsible for us as adults. So, but that program has some good controls in place, and there's been a lot of good agricultural related businesses and agricultural enterprises that have begun strictly out of that original $5,000 youth project. So great question. Thanks for asking. I apologize.
Okay, so I have a follow up to that. So
Sure.
What if one group that I have in mind down here is actually a teacher, and she's partnered with a group called Cincy STEM Lab, who does have farming background. Both of them do, actually, the teacher and the organization. And if they wanted to kind of spearhead that, would this track of funding be applicable to them if they wanted to come to the organization and not to the youth directly? How would that work? Because they will have multiple youth. They want to do like a beginning farmer, but
Sure.
for high school students. So when they turn 18, now they'll be ready for the regular USDA track of funding.
Absolutely. So how we've had this work in a lot of instances is we have, like, say, for example, FFA is run through a high school, similar to what you're talking about here, program. And that FFA instructor will invite FSA to come in and present to the class. They may have already, say, a project set up, whether it's a feeder calf or whatever. And they work in class on outlining what their budgets are. They have everything lined up, and it's part of their curriculum to obtain this loan if they need to or they want to. Okay. And so we help facilitate the loan process there. Again, the teacher is and thank you, Jesse, for posting the youth loan fact sheet in the chat there. The youth loan process is facilitated there, and again, the teacher serves as the mentor. And we can certainly look at the organization and probably something, again, if it's not something we're familiar with, like 4-H or FFA, we want to run that through the state office to make sure that that's going to qualify. But if it is run through the high school, it's a mentored program, it's a curriculum program, whatever. I'm certain that we would at least listen to where that's at, and yeah, it's definitely something that we would look at, and we've done before. So.
Okay, thank you.
I see there's a hand up.
All right, let's hear the questions.
Hey, Kurt. Hey, thank you again for your presentation. It's always good to see you. Um, one of the one of the issues that we're finding as an extension unit is, you touched on it, and I'm glad you really did when you talked about the 5 Cs and that kind of thing, as far as folks that are applying for FSA loans. So if you can, and I know it's sort of contingent upon the circumstances, but what is the turnaround time when someone is denied? Let's say they, like you talked about, the medical bills and those kinds of things. How soon can they come back to see you, or how does that work? If you don't mind. Yes.
Sure. So like you mentioned, it is contingent a little bit on each individual situation. So if we're looking at, okay, there's a bunch of stuff on your credit report that's just not going to allow us to make the loan. There's just too much going on there right now. What our first step is to allow that applicant the opportunity to explain what's going on there. So if it is medical bills, it's something else. It's not going to be an immediate denial. We're going to have that conversation and make sure that we understand what's going on there. We're also going to give the opportunity to clean that up. So if you say, hey, this is all erroneous, or this has all been taken care of a long time ago, that happens quite a bit. We see a lot of that where stuff just never got cleaned up and it's been taken care of. So we're going to give the opportunity to go ahead and contact creditors, get that taken off the credit report. We'll get an opportunity to pull another credit report and make sure that it is cleaned up. If that's the case and that can be handled that way, we can get right back at it. If it's something where it's a more serious deal, where we've got a trend line for bad payment history, or we've got a bankruptcy or something like that, we look for a 36-month track record of good credit or acceptable credit. So to answer the question there, I guess the hard and fast is 36 months. We look for, anything outside of 36 months. If there's nothing within that 3 years, we really don't weigh too much on it. So that would be that'd be the answer there.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the question.
Kurt, I didn't hear. I know with a lot of the NRCS programs, there's specific time frames they have to apply by, and it's like in a year you can apply once. Or with the microloan program, is there are there time frames to that?
So good question. So the loan programs are continuous throughout the year. So the only thing it's contingent upon is available financing, and Congress has done a good job of funding those programs in recent years, and we haven't had any backlogs that would preclude us from obligating those loans. So we can take microloans, farm ownership loans, operating loans at any time during the year. There's no sign-up deadline. The only thing would be whether or not the funding's available, and again, we really haven't had any issue with that.
I wonder, you mentioned equip. I think that might be something that people might be interested in, some of our farmers. I wonder if you could say more about that.
Sure, and I'll do my best. Admittedly, that's not in my direct area of expertise, but EQIP program, it can be used for some improvements projects, conservation wise, and it's something that's can be used as a cost share deal. FSA can certainly help, but where we see a lot of that intertwining of FSA and EQIP is in the funding process, because EQIP is a reimbursable program, meaning you have to put funds in up front. And if you don't have the funds available up front to take care of that, that means you have to take it out in a loan of some sort. And so that's where FSA's microloan program can come in as a short-term loan. We would take an assignment on that payment. Once the project's complete, NRCS would administer the payment, which would then in turn go to FSA to pay off the balance of the loan. So it can work pretty smooth that way. And, we can coordinate locally between NRCS and farm loan representation to make sure that everybody's on the same page and there's no hiccups.
Other questions from the audience? Could you say a little bit about, I'm sorry.
This is Ambrose. I did have a question, Kurt. In terms of the purchasing or buying of a farm, I'm in a couple of Facebook groups of new farmers and Black-owned farms, and it's folks from across the country, and many times there will be questions that people put in, asking, where can they, how can they buy a farm? Are there any farms available, and where can they get resources to purchase a farm? So I know that you just went over some of the loan products there. With respect to Ohio, if we have some urban farmers, let's say they have a high tunnel, maybe a small lot, in Cleveland or Toledo, where have you. Have you worked with any projects where someone has gone from operating a small urban ag project to expanding out into one of the rural counties, or larger operating?
Sure, and I'll say this, being that this has been a long time in development, trying to outreach to the urban areas, and I know that you all can attest to the efforts that have been put into developing agriculture in these areas. We're just starting to see some of this really take place, and we do have a couple of projects that are going on throughout the state where we're starting to get some funding put into the urban areas. I'm not sure that we've necessarily seen them, all of them or many of them, expand yet. They're still in kind of the smaller development phase. I know that there's plans. I do know of one specifically that has grown quite a bit locally, and but he's still maintained his urban presence, and so I do think there's opportunity there to, and working with the municipalities. There's a lot of resources, and again, I may be not the best to elaborate further on it, but there's a lot of resources with local, whether they're urban land banks or just working with municipality to take care of some abandoned lots, land access and that aspect, and developing that into what they need their operation to be. One point I'd like to make is location is a big deal. Your location, just because the land is there doesn't necessarily mean it's the best for what you're looking to do. You got to look and see if it's going to support the type of ag you're looking to carry out. You got to look and see if it's going to be close to a available market. Is something you're going to have to transport your products to get it to somebody that's going to buy it, or is it in a community where people are going to walk right up and buy from you that way? So a lot to take into consideration when looking at that. Now, I have a couple of other projects that have kind of blown up. They're not necessarily in overly rural, and not necessarily in what would be considered urban areas, but they have been specialty farmers looking at the truck farming type of stuff, and they've been able to take advantage of their locations near to those high residential areas, and they've really seen just exponential growth, especially as people really get interested in where their food comes from, and locally sourced and all that good stuff. So that may have been long-winded for your question, but and hopefully I answered it.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was great. With respect to the last projects that you were just mentioning that were in that space between rural and urban, what kind of would you consider that suburban or exurban, or and what kind of acreage are they sort of typically using in that kind of project?
So one that comes to mind in particular, the gentleman, he actually had done some extensive planning, and I'm talking like when he bought his, I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 acres, 10 to 15 years before he ever took his project and went with it. He actually was employed at a large greenhouse, an extremely large greenhouse in the area. He learned the ropes there. He became, he worked his way up, became a manager, and he got himself to a position where he wanted to go out on his own. And, he came to me with a very well drawn out business plan. He did not have a ton of equity in excess. He didn't have a ton of capital, but he had the know-how. He had the offsetting factors to mitigate the risk that his operation brought. And we deemed it a worthwhile risk, especially given the market he was in. And, I won't say it was all roses from the beginning for him, but he's worked through it. And, he's kind of located in an area where he's got a liberal arts college that he's able to support locally. He's got access to a lot of local markets, weekend markets, daily markets, and he's got some contracts with some high-end restaurants as well. So he's been able to tap into a number of different markets, being that he's located where he's at. But he's got, I would say, maybe 2 to 3 acres total, and he's not utilizing all of it. He's got a couple of, I think he's actually up to 4 now, 24 by 48 or no, let's see, what are they? 24 by 48 greenhouses, and he's done very well with it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
With all the new programming coming on board through USDA, especially through FSA, I'm excited because it's really looking at how to serve all of Ohio, not just the eastern side, not just the western side, or north or south or central, right? But I would just like your personal take on that, because you've been at the helm of all these changes and had to pivot. So how are you feeling about the changes, and what things are making you excited, or looking ahead, what things you think you might be able to work in to improve?
Sure, and I'll qualify this by saying that my personal opinions bear absolutely no weight to the decisions being made anywhere else on what programs do or don't happen. So, but it's important to keep in mind that when programs are rolled out through USDA, that's a national organization. So they may not make sense for a certain area in Ohio, but there may be somewhere, in California or Oregon or Arizona or, Kansas, wherever that benefits greatly from that program. So that's why we have so many programs, because we do have such a large country and a diverse agriculture. So, but to your point, we've had quite a few things roll out recently that really focus on urban agriculture. We've had the Urban County Committee project that's in Cleveland, that was initiated through the 2018 Farm Bill, and Cleveland was lucky enough to be chosen as one of the 5 initial pilot programs, and where we've actually had a county committee representation carved out of urban Cleveland. Portland, Oregon, and I'm gonna kill myself by trying to come up with the rest of them. Let's see, Richmond, Virginia, and I think Phoenix, Arizona, and there's one more. I'm not even gonna try to bend my brain over it, but anyways, those projects have been in formation for a couple of years now. They're getting people involved and representing FSA in those communities. And I think that can open up some opportunities that maybe we weren't able to tap into before, for people to participate in programs and benefit from those programs, because there are benefits there. And, maybe the outreach efforts had just been missing the mark. I know that there's been a lot of change in policy and verbiage in our handbooks. So one of the things was qualifications for farmers. That used to carry some of the programs carry the qualification. You had to reside in a rural area, and it deemed what a rural area was. There was a residency requirement for those areas. You couldn't be over a certain number. That was considered urban inside of those limits. So I mean, we had drawn out borders where we simply couldn't serve because didn't meet the rural requirement. They've taken those out. We're looking at urban areas now, and we're applying our program eligibility to those urban areas as well. So again, we're a little behind the game there, but we're able to have those outreach efforts like what we're doing here with the urban county committees. There's talk about expanding that urban county committee network depending on the success of these others. So, you know, we're looking for increased participation. We're looking for increased knowledge, more outreach events like this, and getting people comfortable with working with the USDA. I do want to make a point that I think I failed to make in my presentation, and there's a difference between how established operators approach USDA and how new operators approach USDA. And it's nothing good, bad, or indifferent. It's just a fact. Established operators that come to USDA understand that not every program applies to them. That they hear no about a program doesn't necessarily mean that they're just not doing the right thing. It just means that that program, again, nationwide, maybe doesn't apply to their area. I think it's important for new producers to understand that just because you've been told that maybe you don't qualify for this program doesn't mean that you're automatically disqualified from all programs or that they're not willing to work with you. One thing that I like to stress is if you hear no from USDA at all, it's not no forever. Very rarely is it no forever. It's not right now or not this time. And there's maybe specific reasons behind that. But, you know, I try to always preach to my staff that we don't want to close doors permanently. We want to, if we have to close the door, we have to, you know, maybe not open this door. We want to show them how to open the lock. You know, we want to give them that access code so that they can work towards, you know, opening that door, whatever that requirement is to get into that program or that experience needed to get there, so that we don't feel like, okay, we're getting stonewalled. It's never going to happen for us, because that's just not true. In most cases, that's just simply not true. It's just that, you know, there are requirements to the program, and hopefully our local FSA staff will do the best job they can to work with producers to help them understand that. But again, that's something we have to work on as an agency is internal outreach and informing our folks that, you know, as we get more non-traditional or non-familiar producers coming into our doors, we have to understand that they don't look at our programs and our opportunities as the way some of these established operators do, because they're just simply not familiar with us.
If I can real quick, I know that we're short on time, Kurt. I just want to do this quick shameless plug to say that we with Extension and CED and ANR really appreciate the partnership that we started with you, with Christina, the whole FSA staff months ago. And I'm so happy to see where we are. I love the fact that you and Eric will be working together, moving ahead. And I like folks to know that, you know, FSA is not some big agency that, you know, that only moves with, you know, big farms and that kind of thing. So just for me as a program leader to see where this relationship started earlier this year and where we are, I just have to put that shameless plug out that I'm so glad to see you as a part of this and where we're going forward with CED and ANR, as well as our other program areas of 4-H and FCS. So just had to put that plug out there. Tell Christina I said hello.
I will, and thank you for allowing me to be participating in your programs. It's really opened a lot of doors for the agency that maybe we haven't been able to tap into certain areas. So we do appreciate that.
Bravo.
And let me just say briefly as you wrap up to our farmers on the call, you know, there are points here like, you know, Kurt's talking about business plans. You need to have your business plan ready. You can't walk into a FSA office and say, what should I do? You know, so anyways, those are the kinds of things that we are here to support you with, along with the other resources that Kurt shared. So again, reach out, and this is being recorded, so we'll send this out, and we'll put it up on our YouTube channel and such. So let your friends know in the farming community about this great information. And Michelle, you look like you're mute.
I just wanted to thank you, Kurt, for putting this together and coming and giving this presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone. And again, if we're here most Thursdays, this is part of an ongoing series, Open Office Live. And so we just thank you all and keep tuned.